If you are looking to break your lease early but are unsure how to proceed, you are in the right place. In this video, I am going to cover 10 ways to end your lease agreement without penalty. Let's get into it. Number 1. Violations of the implied warranty of habitability. The implied warranty of habitability is a legal doctrine that obligates your landlord to provide a safe and habitable dwelling for you. What does this actually mean? It means that even if your lease doesn't spell it out, your landlord is required to keep your place livable and safe, including making required repairs. Some of the most common reasons for a violation of this implied warranty include the presence of mold or pests, like roaches or mice, or water-based conditions such as a leaky roof or flooded dwelling. If any of these apply to you, you may have a right to terminate your lease early if your landlord fails to remedy the situation after being notified. Number 2. Landlord's breach of lease agreement. A landlord has just as much an obligation to comply with the lease as you do. So, if they are violating it, you may be able to terminate the lease agreement without penalty. Some common examples of a landlord not meeting their lease obligations include not making required repairs, entering your home without notice or consent, or not eliminating pests. Of course, it's only a violation if the lease requires the landlord to do any of these things, but most do. Number 3. Domestic violence. Many states give tenants the right to end their lease early if they are the victim of domestic violence. So, if this applies to you and you no longer feel safe in your home, you may be able to break your lease early, provided that your state's laws permit it. In most cases, you will need to provide your landlord with appropriate proof of such abuse, which could include restraining orders, police reports, or other legal documentation. Number 4. Victim of harassment or crime. Being a victim of unlawful harassment or a serious crime is another potential way to end your lease early. Depending on your state's laws, harassment can include stalking, threats, or other actions that create a potentially unsafe environment for you. As with claims of domestic violence, you will likely need to provide proof of unlawful harassment or crime to get out of your lease. Number 5. Violations of right to quiet enjoyment. The covenant of quiet enjoyment is a legal doctrine that states that tenants have the right to have quiet and peaceful possession of their home without undue interference or disruption from their landlord. If your landlord is violating your right to quiet enjoyment, you may have the right to terminate your lease early without any penalty. In some cases, even the actions of your neighbors could give rise to a violation of this right to quiet enjoyment if your landlord can control them and does not. Some examples of this include excessively loud or disruptive neighbors, your landlord entering your home without notice or consent, and excessive inspections. Number 6. Disability. If you have become physically or mentally disabled, you may be able to terminate your lease early. In most cases, if you qualify, your landlord must make reasonable accommodations for your disability. That may include terminating your lease if you are no longer able to function in a regular rental unit and need specialized care. As with most of these specialized situations, you have to submit proof of your disability, which usually takes the form of a doctor's note. You must also give your landlord adequate notice of your intent to leave. In some cases, you may also need to provide proof of your new place which does accommodate your disability. Number 7. Military deployment. You might be eligible to terminate your lease without paying any fees if you are a member of the military and receive orders for deployment. This is because the Service Members Civil Relief Act provides active military the right to get out of lease agreements if they are called to deploy. Under the Act, if you signed a lease prior to active duty service, or if you're already serving on active duty and receive permanent change of station or deployment orders for a period of at least 90 days, then you should be able to terminate your housing lease without penalty. Number 8. Illegal rental property. If you're living in an illegal dwelling, like a garage conversion that wasn't properly permitted or an extra bedroom that was built out without authorization, you may be able to exit your lease. As a general matter, landlords need to follow housing codes and rules, including getting proper permits when needed. Failure to do so may make the lease for the place you are renting void. So, if you are living in a place where it seems like the landlord may not have gotten the right permits, you may want to explore this option. Number 9. Job relocation. If your job is relocating you to a place where you can't reasonably commute there from your current home, you may be able to break your lease if your lease has a job relocation provision. Many of them do, but you need to read your lease carefully because it may be buried in there. Plus, There may be conditions that you need to follow to exercise that right to terminate. Often, you will need to give adequate notice, proof of the job relocation, which often needs to be sufficiently far away, and, in some cases, even a fee for early exit. Number 10. Negotiated termination with landlord. Of course, if all else fails, you can simply talk with your landlord to see if you can negotiate an early termination. They may be willing to do so if you pay an early termination fee, which may be better than being on the hook for all of your remaining rental payments. They may also be willing to have someone take over your lease if you are able to find them a replacement. Closing thoughts. Breaking a lease is never an easy decision. But if you are in a situation where you must do so, I hope that this video has been helpful in informing you of your options.